What's up? We are the Keepers of Nerddom. I'm Cody. This is
Chris.
And we want to talk to you today about our top 3 and our bottom 3 Marvel films. And let's be honest, the best Marvel film of all time.
That wasn't even a good DC film.
Fair enough. Ironically, I enjoyed that film until the point where he fights a cloud. And I'm okay with bad CGI.
Ryan Reynolds doesn't even like that movie.
I know, and that's the fair thing. He doesn't. But I enjoyed Ryan Reynolds in it because I think he can make a film on his own, and that's the funny thing to me. And
to clarify one thing off the bat, we're only going through the MCU. We might do other movies at another point.
Yeah, X-Men stuff.
Yeah,
we're not gonna hit because that would be a fun list to try to figure out because those are harder in some ways, at least to pick the best ones.
Top 2 X-Men movies: Deadpool, Deadpool 2.
Okay. And also honorable mention. Deadpool.
Actually, take off Deadpool 2. Deadpool, Once Upon a Deadpool.
Yep.
Love that movie so much. It was so funny.
Anyway, we're not doing that list.
Nope.
Not today. We would love to hear though. What is your favorite Marvel films, and what are the ones that you just can't stand, and why for each of those? Down in the comments, like, subscribe, share, ding the bell.
Yeah, hit that notification bell so that you're notified every time that we put out a new video. And I don't know if it's true or not, but some people say that if you do subscribe, sometimes the system unsubscribes you. So go ahead and check that. I don't know if it's true, but Dream and Ludwig say it, and they're big YouTubers.
Ludwig von Beethoven?
No, Ludwig Ahgren.
Ludwig
the most subscribed Twitch streamer of all time.
Ludwig the Super Mario.
He's my favorite streamer.
Bowser
We're moving on.
Kid that's not a kid of Bowser?
No.
Okay, anyway. So, Chris, what well first off, what gives you makes you love a Marvel film?
I really like the funny ones.
The funny ones. Okay. So that will define I think some of your top picks, is that fair?
Yeah.
And so the unfunny ones are probably the ones that are in your bottom?
Kinda-ish. I mean, I like ones that aren't funny, but the funny ones are definitely gonna come up on top for me.
Okay. For me, I enjoy films that either have a character that I really, really like and tell a good story, or have good compilations of characters together and are still able to tell good stories.
I like those things too.
So,
but I also like to laugh.
The funny ones are so good, and I saw some of your lists and I was like, man, if we were doing top 5s and stuff, they probably would have been on there because I'm right there with you on some of those. So, let's go. What is one of your top 3?
Probably my favorite MCU movie is going to be Thor Ragnarok.
Why?
Because first of all, Thor is my favorite Avenger.
Okay.
And
you mean Point Break?
Yeah, Point Break. He's my favorite Avenger, and so when they started with Thor, they seemed like they were trying to make him serious and stuff, and then they realized just how funny Chris Hemsworth was, and they were just go with it.
So does that mean he was funny on the sets? He was a clown?
Yeah, watching interviews, they would talk about he's just naturally funny. He did great in the comedy scenes. He would just joke around with people and just realized how naturally funny he was. And then they went to Thor Ragnarok and they just totally owned that. And it's just a really funny movie, and I enjoy it a lot.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting. I bet he really enjoyed having the fat bod for a while just because of the weird shenanigans of that whole thing. And it's funny, so many people hated that they made Thor fat, but it's he's struggling with depression.
I thought it was funny.
And he got to be goofy as all get out with it.
Yeah, he totally rolled with it. And it's a real thing. He was going through some stuff at the time and he put on weight.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, Thor Ragnarok. It's funny, when I first saw it, in some ways I was like, this is so bizarrely different than the other Thor movies. It kind of frustrated me a little bit. And the more I've watched it, I already liked it at the beginning because it was a good film, but it was just so different. And then the more I watch, I'm like, it really is not just the best Thor film, because that would be pretty easy to put on top, but yeah, it's just a good film, and it lets Chris Hemsworth just play it up, but yet it's still Thor.
Yeah,
and so it's a good balance of that, and good supporting characters as well. And Loki, man, I think they realized over time how much gold they had with Tom Hiddleston.
Yeah.
Because, wow.
And he's a great guy and a great actor, too.
Yeah, he is fantastic.
And that was another thing I loved, was they really started bringing in that, goofy brother relationship between the two instead of just, oh, he's evil and he's good. They have to fight. Like, they're brothers, and as much as maybe Loki doesn't always want to admit it, they care about each other.
Yeah.
And you get to one of my favorite lines from that movie is when Thor's talking about when they're little kids, and he's like, he knew that I love snakes, so he turned into a snake. And then when I picked him up to pet him, he jumped out and was like, ha, it's me, and stabbed me.
And I love in that scene Tom Hiddleston in the background going,
I've never met this man before in my life.
And what's funny is that movie actually helps you appreciate the other Thor films and Avengers better, because you always just feel like Thor's going, he's my brother. Oh, I love him.
And like Loki's obviously evil.
Yeah.
Like they need to stop him, and he's like, he is my brother. And then you realize like they do have this brother connection, and Loki finally starts like going towards it.
Yeah, because it's like at the very beginning of Thor, the original one where they go fight the ice giants and stuff. Like you already see
Thor. Wasn't that the name of the movie?
Maybe. I don't remember. But like you see Loki already kind of losing, already trying to be treacherous, and it's like we needed to see that.
Yeah.
Of that there was connection and there was funny, crazy things that were happening.
I think
as
it was
kids.
a good redemption start of the redemption for him. And obviously he's fully redeemed when he like tries to kill Thanos for what he's doing.
Yes. And so that film, man, it has so much good in it. And I love whenever my favorite moment in that movie, I think, is whenever Thor's getting ready to go fight as a gladiator, and he's talking to rock guy. What is his name? Oh my goodness, Korg.
Yeah. And
he's talking about his hammer, and Korg's like, "So you had this weird relationship thing with your hammer?" And it's just so funny. You're like, "This is getting weird." And I guess he makes a joke reference to Taika Waititi's old show or movie with vampires that have a 3-pronged stake to impale 3 vampires.
Yeah.
It's like just a funny knockoff random liner. Like,
yeah, and there's just so many things like that. Like when he's out there for the gladiator fight, and the Hulk comes out, and he's like, "Yes, I know him from work. He's a friend from work."
I love it. And then Loki's face when he sees Hulk.
Yeah.
Oh man, it is. It's a good. And plus Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah.
Jeff Goldblum.
And he melts his cousin.
Yeah. I think my favorite thing of Jeff Goldblum is he's kind of like Nicolas Cage. Nicolas Cage doesn't come into a movie and play a character. Nicolas Cage plays Nicolas Cage.
I love Nicolas Cage.
And that's Jeff Goldblum. Like, Jeff Goldblum comes in and plays Jeff Goldblum. And it's amazing. Because, they're just like, just be Jeff Goldblum. All right. And it's awesome.
And speaking of all this stuff, I can't wait for Loki to come out.
Right. That's coming soon.
Yep.
So, wow. Sorry. Ragnarok is, if we had a top 5, it'd be on my top 5.
Movie.
Pretty easy. So I'll go with one of mine. I'm not going to go with my top 1. But I think Civil War is right up there for my top 3 easily. And I will say this. It is actually my top Avengers film. Because it's one of these weird things is it's not labeled as Avengers film, but when you get down into the nitty gritty of it, it is.
It's definitely an Avengers
yeah,
film.
it is, but it's the third Captain America film. Labeled that because they had contract with Steve Rogers, with Chris Evans.
Yeah.
For 3 films, and for 3 independent focused on him films.
Yeah.
And Civil War, you go, this isn't really a Steve Rogers film. It's an Avengers film. It's also a Tony Stark film because it focuses on him a lot.
Yeah.
It's also a Bucky film. So it really is. I mean, you could still argue that it is Steve Rogers' film, but at the same time, it is Avengers 2.5.
Yeah.
Because that's right after Age of Ultron, right? I think.
That sounds right.
I think it's in that thing because it was before.
Yeah, because they're dealing with all the fallout
Infinity
from what happened in Sokovia.
Yeah, and I love that film. I do so much because you get to see these Avengers show up and fight each other. And ironically, there's memes about it, like, why is Thor and Hulk not in the film? Well, the answer is the whole airport would be gone. It was bad enough with Ant-Man being Giant Man.
Yeah.
But I love that film because it is such a story of redemption and anger, and we get Black Panther introduced, and he's so... normally I don't like it when a movie, like see Justice League for this, introduces characters and doesn't explain them well. The original one before we got to finally get to see the Zack Snyder cut. Where they just introduce characters and don't give you enough to really make you appreciate the character.
Yeah.
And Black Panther, we don't get much, but yet we got enough.
Yeah.
Like, he's ticked because he thinks Bucky murdered his dad and killed the world organization like leaders that were meeting.
Yeah.
Their UN or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. And it's a tough film, and it's so good because of that. And you have personal fights and drama, and like Vision and Wanda are having a relationship, but then Hawkeye comes to get her out, and Vision's like, he's still not happy about it, but he loves her, mm-hmm. and then causes him to do a miscalculation and injure Rhodey, like cripple him, even though they're fighting. And it's just, and we get introduced to SpiderMan.
Yeah.
Was that the first time we get introduced? I think it is.
I can't remember if that was before or after Homecoming.
No, that is.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, because he gets introduced, he's like, I know a guy. And so again, we get introduced to a character, and it's interesting because he just shows a little video clip. This you? Mm-hmm. Of him saving somebody and then bouncing off a bus or something. And it's just so cool that they were able to introduce characters in such simple ways and yet so elegant.
Yeah, and you mentioned Hulk and Thor not being there. I love that, even though they're not canon, I love the little side videos that Chris Hemsworth does about like what he's doing while that's going on.
Oh, you're talking about where he hangs his hammer on the...
Well, I'm talking about like where he has the roommate that he lives with, and he's like...
Is he in Australia?
Probably.
I think so.
Yeah, but he has a roommate that he's living with, and he can't figure out a cell phone. That's why none of the Avengers could get a hold of him.
That's so awesome. and he's like, send an email.
Yeah.
I remember those. But yeah, that film to me is so good, and it is the best of the Avengers films, and I love all of the Avengers films. Yeah, we'll talk about that other one. But what's your next one?
My next one, let's go with Homecoming, Spider-Man Homecoming.
Okay, why?
Once again, it was a funny one. I loved watching Peter like learn how to use this suit and everything, and he's gets trapped in that like vault, and he just like starts talking to his suit's AI, Karen. Which, fun fact, the voice of Karen is Paul Bettany's wife, so he does Jarvis. So they're like the
I didn't
AI
know that.
couple.
I didn't know that until we were talking right before this film, or before shooting this.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
But I think that their relationship is a lot of fun, and there was something else there was one other specific part that I was going to talk about, but I don't remember what. But I just enjoyed the movie a lot. It
is a great film. Ironically, Marvel, and that was Sony, but at the same time, you can see Marvel's hand in it.
Yeah, it's still technically part of the MCU.
You're right. The fact that they take villains that nobody should ever care about in Homecoming and Far From Home, and make them the most interesting, fascinating villains. Mm-hmm. The simple fact, Vulture, he is a lame, maybe C-tier villain that Spider-Man fights. It's kind of like Stiltman. They're lame, but yet they put the perfect casting, and then they also turn him. I mean, when you first see Vulture, he's not as old as they portray him in the comics either. Mm-hmm. And Michael Keaton is just, you get a personal story. He's trying to make money to help his family,
but they start him off with a background, like you can understand why he's angry.
Yeah. And they take it, and then when they first show you Vulture and why he's Vulture, so he could steal this epic tech from alien ships that S.H.I.E.L.D's trying to hide in the recovery places.
Because he didn't want to do that in the first place. He wanted to just recover it and dispose of it to make money.
Yeah, as an honest living. And then they're like, no, we're a government. So good. And Michael Keaton he's just a fantastic actor anyway. Mm-hmm. And my understanding, too, whenever they were fighting at the end of the movie, he would occasionally just whisper at Peter Parker, or at, what's his name?
Tom Holland.
Tom Holland, thank you. That he just whispered, I'm Batman. And that's just awesome. So, just such a good character. Mm-hmm. And the fact that he survived the film, and we get an end credit scene of him in jail.
Yeah,
Scorpion. Who's going to be the Scorpion. Is that his name?
That's going to be Scorpion.
Yeah. It just sounds wrong for me. I don't know why. But it's so good. So good. And, comedy. And again, Tony Stark, Iron Man's in it. And he also plays, the backup to the show. But at the same time, sometimes he steals the show, too. I love whenever he's talking to Peter through his suit, but he's in, like, Dubai, India.
Yeah.
And the show...
Dubai's not in India.
My bad. Where's Dubai?
Dubai's in the United Arab Emirates.
Okay, my bad. Whoops. Anyway, But it's funny, like he's doing things and the suit's mimicking him, so he's like taking a drink of something, and the suit's like holding a cup, but not. And also, you notice like the things that happen from Civil War are, he has later on he has a parachute in his suit, he has warmers in the suit from falling into the cold water and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just things that he's learned over the time, over the years.
Rhodey fell, and now he has a parachute.
Yeah, it's stuff like that. It's really interesting. And I appreciate that. Like, that's good continuity. Continuity.
Yeah.
Dubai. All right. That's a great one. Anything else on that?
I like Tom Holland. He's really funny.
Is he your favorite Spider-Man?
Yeah, he is my favorite Spider-Man so far.
Okay.
So Tobey Maguire is a little off topic. Tobey Maguire was a good Peter Parker, not as good as Spider-Man. Andrew Garfield was a great Spider-Man, not as good Peter Parker.
He was too cool for Peter Parker.
Yeah, definitely.
Very
I
much.
think that Tom Holland is the best balance we've had so far.
Yeah, I agree. That's very good. And he's just so awkward, too.
Yeah, he's a nerdy, awkward Spider-Man, but he's a calm, cool, and relaxed. Or he's a nerdy, awkward Peter Parker, and he's a calm, cool, and relaxed Spider-Man.
Yep.
And he's just really funny watching him in all his accidental leaks, and he looks so lost in some of the scenes because he doesn't know what's going on.
Nobody tells him anything because apparently he spoke too
yeah,
often.
Yeah,
on
he's let out too many spoilers, so he doesn't always know what's going on until he gets to the scene. Like in Tony Stark's funeral scene, he didn't know he was going to a funeral.
That's awesome.
He was just told to dress up in a suit.
Just dress up. We aren't telling you what's going on. No, Tom Holland, he is so good. I love in Civil War whenever he's fighting Bucky and Falcon, and then he just grabs Bucky's arm when he goes to punch him. He goes, "Oh, cool! You have a metal arm!"
And Bucky's just like, "How is he this strong?"
I love it because it's a great introduction.
Well, it's like the when he first meets Doctor Strange, and he goes, "I'm Peter Parker," and he's Doctor Strange. "Oh, we're using our made up names. I'm Spider-Man."
It's amazing. It's amazing. Like that is how Marvel has figured it out, and unfortunately, they just keep doing it. The same kind of stuff. And so, if you're a true blue Marvel fan, you enjoy it. But sometimes there's going to hit a point where it gets old for you, where the comedy just goes, "Okay, we've seen and heard these things."
It's not going to get old for me.
Good. I'm glad. My next one is Iron Man 3. I actually hated this film when I first saw it.
Yeah, because it's less of an Iron Man movie and it's more of a Tony Stark movie, I feel like.
It is. And actually, that's not even the reason I hated it. It was because I love the fact that he has Mandarin in the comics as his villain. And that movie, they play it up. It's going to be the Mandarin, and it's not actually the Mandarin.
It ends up being Trevor Slattery.
Yeah, it's Trevor Slattery is just an actor portraying it, but the real Mandarin in the film is the guy behind AIM.
The Mandarin.
Yeah, exactly. And that's...
Because even then, he's not the Mandarin.
No, and as we've seen with movies coming out, like, finally we're going to get that.
Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. I can't wait.
It's going to be great. That's finally...
Even that's changing stuff a little bit.
It is, but at the same time, the things that happened because they realized how upset some people were, they had little miniature films with Trevor Slattery in prison, and apparently the Mandarin does do something to him and goes, "I don't like people using my name." And that's interesting. So the Mandarin technically already existed.
It's like All Hail the King or Long Live the King or something like that.
Yeah, and those are interesting. But what I realized was, for one, this is the MCU, not the comics, so it is going to be different. And this film really is. It is a film about Tony Stark. And I actually appreciated that we get to see how genius of a man he is, other than he gives his address to a terrorist. That is the worst.
Oh, yeah, he just openly says, "Come and get me," and then they do.
Yeah.
Obviously, they're going to.
Worst part of the film, honestly. That's the one part I'm like, you're an idiot. But we get introduced to the kid that's at his funeral later on.
Yep.
And I enjoy him, and I didn't realize that was him right away when I first saw it. I was like, who is that random?
Yeah, I had to look it up on the internet.
Because, it's been so long, and so he's gone through puberty, so he looks different.
Yeah.
And I enjoy that film, though, too, because you get to see... I love all the armors. I got to see my favorite armor of all time, Blue Steel, which is the MCU equivalent's Silver Centurion, but a blue version of it. And he wears the Silver Centurion in the movie, which it honestly looks really good in the films, because Silver Centurion in the comics was from back in the 60s? I don't know, 70s, I don't remember. but it had shoulder pad things,
Mm-hmm.
and it looks, back then it would have looked really cool, but to a modern audience it looks kind of derpy and dorky. But the armored up version of it looked fantastic, and then Blue Steel, when I finally saw that one as an armor, I was like, this is fantastic. And just getting to see the idea of Tony Stark having all of these drones essentially run by Jarvis, and just sometimes though you stop to think and you go, and that's why I appreciate that film of just seeing Tony Stark, because it seems like in the films after a while, Iron Man, is it Tony driving the suit or is it Jarvis? You know what I mean? And that's what it feels like sometimes. And so that movie,
kind of like an autopilot kind of thing.
Yeah, and so that movie made me go, okay, no, this is truly Tony Stark behind the scenes making these things what they are, because the suits that Jarvis is actually driving are getting blown up left and right. And some of the ones Tony Stark's in, they get destroyed, but he jumps out of them at the right time too.
Yeah.
And moves to what he needs.
Which that was a pretty cool scene.
That whole fight scene is just awesome. And the fact that
maybe it's okay that he told a terrorist his address.
We got to see the most epic thing ever. And Extremis is so cool. Like, I loved it in the comics, and then them showing it finally. It's really pretty similar to what it does, you know, and I like that. I wish they would have gone and shown us Tony Stark with Extremis as well. Because that would have been dope. But the simple fact is, did he really need it in the Marvel Cinematic Universe? No. He kept getting cooler and cooler tech anyway. So, and Mark 42, while it seems like it's not as cool tech, but it was also a prototype stage as well. So it really truly wasn't ready for combat.
Yeah.
So I love that film. It's a good film. What's your next one?
My next one's going to be Black Panther.
Okay. Go.
This one's not as much a comedy movie. There are some really funny points, like when Shuri has the shoes that are made of vibranium so you can't hear them. She goes, I call them sneakers. I was cracking up. I thought that was so funny. And then I watched that in the theater opening night, and like everyone was hype. It was so much fun. I love the music in the movie, which music in movies is always a big thing for me. Yeah. I really like Michael B. Jordan and Chadwick Boseman.
What's funny with Michael B. Jordan is he was in the Fantastic Four film recently, and that movie was just terrible. So I had no expectations of anything good from him. Not because of necessarily him, but just when you get into a bad film, you're just not sure. And then I think he was more interesting than Chadwick Boseman in some parts. I mean, he chewed up scenes.
Yeah,
like he was on fire.
And I thought it had some really good fight scenes, especially up on the mountain. I thought that was so cool. Just watching like when they were like just going through everyone and everyone was backing him up, and then he had, of course, M'Bato challenged him, but just watching that fight was great.
Yeah, I will say
I love. That was another one of the funny points with M'Bato was when they came to find sanctuary in his kingdom, and he was like, "I'll feed you to my children," and he was like, just kidding, we're vegetarians."
I love that. I was actually just going to comment about that. That's like my favorite scene, and also the fact that Bilbo's in the movie. They found a way to make Bilbo show up. So if you don't know what it is, just watch the movie, and if you can't figure it out from there, I don't know, look at the actors list.
And then so when they bring him back to Wakanda to be healed, that's when Shuri's like, "You need to stop bringing me these white boys to heal up." And then referencing Bucky. Yeah.
It's a good film. I don't know that it would ever be in my top, not because it was bad, but it's just. I think honestly, ironically, it's the fight scene at the end, where it devolves into CGI, rubber putty, super... It's one of those things with the Black Panther suit. What can't the Black Panther suit do? And the answer is, apparently, unless you're on a magnetic train that can depower vibranium, which seems like an awful big weakness, actually, you're unstoppable. But it's like, basically, apparently it's a really big weakness, but yet not, because we've never seen it otherwise. And this is just interesting.
Well, they talk about it's not just like any magnets, it's special magnetic frequencies.
Okay. But it seems like all you'd have to do is get a hold of some vibranium, which obviously it's not that hard, at least in the MCU, to get a hold of.
It's not hard if you have connections with Wakanda, but Wakanda seeks out vibranium artifacts and returns them to the homeland.
Right. It's just like, Ultron obviously has some, and he's been killed, but are we sure all the Ultrons that have vibranium on them, are taken back to Wakanda or captured by a government, and so all it would take is a government testing on it and going, 31.7 megahertz, and doing these certain things destabilizes vibranium, and all we got to do then is sniper rifle him. Yeah, game over. Just interesting. Overall, good film though, and
I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens with the upcoming Black Panther movie, because they're still planning on it, but obviously Chadwick's not around for it anymore.
Very hard.
What a dedicated actor to, like, I'm a big Chadwick Boseman fan. I was really sad when I heard that he passed, but what dedication it takes to know you've had colon cancer for 4 years and keep it secret from everyone because you want to continue entertaining people.
Right. Man, it's huge. It's a good film. Very good. It is. I would say my number one is Iron Man 1. It started the MCU. It's the hero's journey. What?
It started the MCU, but I feel like a lot of people credit it for starting superhero movies in the modern era.
What would you say would that be?
Blade.
Right. That's very fair. And so we know I'm not going back to that by any means, but just saying that this was the first film in the MCU, and they took a risk on a film and an actor that they weren't really sure about. And Robert Downey Jr., as we've seen, is the perfect person for Iron Man.
Because how has he turned his life around just like Iron Man has?
He has a very similar hero's journey to Iron Man himself in that film, and just being abusive of substances and other things, and turning it around and figuring out his life, and that's really cool. And Jon Favreau, he knew what he had, and he went with it. And so, in many ways,
Jon Favreau.
Iron Man was a maybe C-tier superhero in the comics. For quite a while. Nobody cared, and this all of a sudden put him as
number one.
And that's so cool. That's so cool. And to me, my favorite scene in that film, and if you haven't caught on, I am a big Iron Man fan, but that favorite scene in that film is actually, yes, that's my DVD of Iron Man 1.
And there's an entire Iron Man wall, and there's an entire Iron Man shrine.
We'll shoot from that angle at some point, but I'll say this, my favorite scene in that film is actually when he does the test of the Iron Man Mark II. And all it is flexing the plates before he goes flying in it. And just that moment, I remember seeing it even in the trailers and going, I'm interested, and then I went and bought comics to understand more of him. And so it got me hooked into the comics from seeing the trailer of the film.
Stark Racing.
Yes. But that scene where he is flexing the armor plates, I'm just like, they made that CGI look so good. Because some of it wasn't CGI, but those plates that were moving, it looked realistic even now. And I'm like, it looks so good. And it makes you go, okay, he's in a super suit that he has designed, and he is now going to try it out. And then he goes, sometimes you got to run before you can walk. And then he goes flying, and everything almost goes really wrong, but it's really cool that he's trying to solve all these things. Plus, Jeff Bridges is just a fantastic villain. Like, their casting always is so good. Yeah. And I think that really hails back from Iron Man 1, is they knew what they had and what they wanted, and they went with it and went, no, let's get these perfect people.
Jon Favreau is...
He is. And I love that he's also Happy Hogan. And because, and he became a more primary character in Spider-Man Far From Home. And I love that, because he's perfect for that role as well. So
he also played... is it Dewey in Daredevil?
I don't remember.
His assistant? Or his partner?
Happy Hogan?
Jon Favreau.
Yeah.
I can't remember his name in the old Daredevil movie.
Yeah.
But
my goodness.
He played Matt Murdock's partner.
He did. It's been a while. I watched that a while back, man. I will say an honorable mention, I would say, is Age of Ultron. Most people regard that as one of the worst of the Avengers films. And I go, I think
It was
it's
pretty
fantastic. I also really enjoy the voice for Ultron.
Oh yeah.
The from the Blacklist. James Spader.
James Spader.
So good.
Is it James Spader or Dave Spader?
James Spader. Plus
he's also in The Office.
The Hulk and Hulkbuster fight scene. Like I like Iron Man anyway, but that fight scene is just so much fun.
With Veronica.
Yeah, watching. Hulk's gonna tear him apart eventually, but I mean, in the end, Iron Man does actually win, but it's because Hulk's
go to sleep.
Finally starting to wear off the Scarlet Witch's mess up, but that's such a good film.
And then eventually, he ends up riding in that same armor.
It's a Mark II of it, but yes.
Yeah.
Because it's more, you can see it's more streamlined as Iron Man armors have gotten. Like, it's got not bulky plates, but more like well-rounded and things like that. And it's interesting to see that, because I actually like the more bulky plate-like things that look more like armor than just a skin over him.
Yeah.
But it's the nanobot stuff, kind of stuff. So, real quick, what's the bottom three? We'll kind of run through these a little faster.
So, one of my least favorite Marvel movies was Thor: The Dark World.
Why is that?
Because even though Thor is my favorite character, it was a slow movie. They weren't using that comedy aspect of Chris Hemsworth yet, which I really like, and it just didn't hold my attention as well.
It is. It's a slow film. I've enjoyed that film because I like Christopher Eccleston he's the main dark elf. But it's slow and it's serious, and that's fair. It's not. It doesn't have the same. They tried a different tone for Thor 1 really and Thor 2, but Thor 2 they really leaned into it hard.
Yeah.
For me, Captain Marvel is definitely the bottom of the list.
That was also on my list.
Yeah. Okay. So anytime, what's her weakness? And the answer is, for her in the movie, it's men and people of authority over her, and then just taking off limiting chip. So she never really had a true weakness other than just taking a chip off her neck. And then she has full access to her powers. And the other thing is, Nick Fury in that film is not portrayed the same as Nick Fury at all in other films. It is before we've seen him. So there should be some difference, but he's kind of a pansy. He's kind of goofy, and you go, but why? And like, I always had this thing from the things he had done and said before, that he was going to be he'd been trained in special ops, and he was in the darkest parts of the covert ops stuff that you could get. And we see him, and he's just working a desk job. Yeah. And he's goofy, and he's like, "Ooh, kitty," and so I didn't actually mind that the cat scratched out his eye. That was kind of funny, but
at least explained it.
Yeah, it explained something. Not that we needed an explanation, right? But just that is not the Nick Fury that we see. That would be that hardcore later on. He should have been already at some level hardcore. And the other thing is, I just don't feel that Brie Larson had
chemistry.
Yes,
with the other actors.
She was pretty well that behind the scenes, but just she kind of wooden in her acting in the film, and she's supposed to be kind of subdued, but at the same time, it comes across as just unlikable. So she has a challenge, and then we see her later on in the next film. She doesn't have very much of a role because they realized that not as many people liked her, even though the movie made over $1 billion. But it just goes to show, just because a movie makes a lot of money doesn't make it actually as good as you think. And some of the conspiracy theories, and some of it you could say is true, where Disney buys tickets to fill seats, and so people were going into opening nights and there was empty seats, but they were told it was sold out. And so it's like, so Disney can put, it made this much money, but they also can put, after the fact, we spent $200 million on these seats to make sure it went over $1 billion, and I don't like that stuff. And so as much as that's conspiracy theory, some of it was true. Like, there was pictures of people taking and going, and we were told it sold out, and there's the first 2-3 rows just empty in their theater. And it's like, but those tickets were bought and paid for. And that irritates me. So anyway, what's your reason for Captain Marvel?
One of the big reasons for me was it came out really close to the same time as Dark Phoenix. It totally overshadowed Dark Phoenix. They have really, if you look closely, they have really close storylines. They're really similar. And I just enjoyed Dark Phoenix better.
Yeah, my understanding is they changed the end of Dark Phoenix fight scene because it was going to be super similar to Captain Marvel.
That's what I've heard.
Interesting. And was my stuff that I put on there also similar to yours with why you don't like Captain Marvel, or is it just those things?
There was some stuff like that, but that was the biggest one for me. Was I just like Dark Phoenix better, and this one totally overshadowed, so that it just seemed like no one liked Dark Phoenix because of that.
Yeah. That's fair. Interesting. Another one for me is the First Avenger. I've grown to appreciate some of it because they were trying to set a tone of a movie set in that era of the 40s, which is cool. But there's other plot hole issues with it and it also just feels cheesier because it's trying to be like a movie from the 40s. But the plot holes are just weird because they don't want to say Nazis very much, if at all. And so very quickly it turns into Hydra only, and then Hydra revolts against the Nazis. But the thing is, Hydra has the ability to make energy weapons in World War II, and we don't see these energy weapons ever show up again, even though the SHIELD has had the Tesseract for a ridiculously long time.
Yeah.
And, granted, it's in the Flarkin for a little while from Captain Marvel, but still, they, act shocked in, was it Avengers? When it's, doing crazy things. And it's
it seems like technology should be a lot further than it is.
Yeah. Yeah, and so in the First Avenger, they have tech that just seems kind of ridiculous that you go, pretty sure Tony Stark's dad, right, would be...
Yeah, could have been able to do all this and more.
Yeah, he would have been experimenting with that like crazy and
Yeah.
doing nutty things if Hydra can figure that out.
Yeah.
In World War II. And, you have 20 plus years or whatever of testing and all this. That just seems a little silly to me. So.
And that was also my last one on this list. And for me, it's just because it was a slower movie. I like fast-paced. I like funny.
Yeah. It sets up a lot of good films because the other two Captain America films are fantastic. Winter Soldier is awesome. And Civil War, as you saw, it's on my top. But it's just, it I don't know. It sets the stage for Steve Rogers, but yet it's got some goofiness to it, and not funny goofy, but just goofy. Yeah. So yeah, and that's true. It is slow. I think my last one, we've hit all yours, right?
Yeah.
Yes, is Iron Man 2. Ironically, talk about slow. It's a filler film, just filler film.
I don't even really remember it. Justin Hammer's in it, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really an excuse to introduce Rhodey. We do get to see the Tesla guy. What's his name? Oh my goodness. Elon Musk.
Yeah.
He's in a scene, which is cool.
In one scene, yeah.
But the thing that bothers me is, ironically, it was the reason I didn't like Iron Man 3 at first. And this one I still just don't like because it's just stupid. They took a character of Whiplash, introduce him, and he was really cool. They take a really dumb character and make it really interesting.
And he was a combination of a couple different villains, wasn't he?
Well, that's where it gets weird. At the end of the film, he then becomes Crimson Dynamo, an entirely different Russian armored villain, but he still has the whips.
Yeah.
So he's like Whiplash Dynamo.
Yeah.
And it just irritated me because you're like, why did Whiplash need to become something else?
Yeah.
He, does he have to? Could he have more armor on? Sure, but they legit made him look like Crimson Dynamo kind of thing. It's like, don't do that. Because I like Mickey Rourke. I think he was really good as a character. Justin Hammer was a lot of fun, but that film it was slow too. A lot of downtime. You'd have the fight with Whiplash in the car. And you got the cool, Mark V suitcase suit. It was neat, but that fight's not very long. And then you get an in-fight that's also not very long or very cool, except you do see the laser thing. Where, Tony says, get down, and he just shoots the lasers out of his gauntlets.
To be honest, I don't remember much.
That's okay. And, I mean, that's the thing.
Maybe that should have been on my list.
It's not memorable, and one that didn't make either of ours, but it's not memorable is the Hulk film.
Yeah.
because it was the second film in the MCU. But it's because Edward Norton didn't last as the Hulk, they kind of always have treated as the redheaded stepchild kind of thing where they just don't talk about it.
Yeah, and there's been other characters that have changed, but that was definitely like the biggest main character, with the next one being Rhodey.
Yeah, but they even like acknowledge immediately in Iron Man 2, like it's the first thing because they have the Senate hearing.
Mm-hmm.
Where he immediately walks up, Robert Downey Jr. walks up to him and goes, "Hey, Rhodey, how's it going?" Like, they immediately acknowledge that it is different and, like, make sure you know that this is Rhodey.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, they don't say it directly, like, "Oh, you look different." But they acknowledge, like, to make sure you know.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a main character, but it's also, I mean, let's be honest, Don Cheadle is awesome.
Oh, yeah.
And Terrence Howard, I'm okay with him, but his voice, it just always cracked me up in Iron Man 1 where, you know, I expect of Rhodey to be tough as nails. He's gonna, and even Don Cheadle doesn't have a really rough and tough voice, but Don Cheadle was always like, "Next time." You're like, why isn't there any gruffness? Where's nothing? And Don Cheadle could at least bring, not necessarily a gruff voice, but he could bring the military side of, "No, you're wrong, and here's how we're doing it." And I appreciated that. But yeah, the fact that Edward Norton got replaced, and they just don't talk about that film. So.
Yep.
Anything else? Last thoughts?
I love Marvel movies.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to the series and the new movies that are coming up.
Yeah. Marvel phase, was this phase 4?
We're in phase 5 now.
No, we're not. No, because in phase 4, because apparently they've come out with a logo for phase 4, and it looks awfully interesting as far as referencing Fantastic Four.
Oh, yeah, I think you're right.
So, because phase 3 ended with...
And let's hope that John Krasinski is going to be Mr. Incredible. Or Mr. Fantastic.
Now I want to see both versions, because that sounds awesome.
I don't think he'd work very well as Mr. Incredible.
No, they just need to get the voice for Mr. Incredible. The guy from, like, was it the Barb show? Coach or something. No, it's from Coach. That's who it is. But yeah, it'd be fun to watch him be an old Mr. Incredible. But, yeah.
No, I want to see him as Mr. Fantastic.
Mr. Fantastic. John Krasinski. I would love to have seen him as Captain America, but yet Chris Evans has been perfect for it.
Yeah.
And John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic would be awesome.
Yeah.
So good. So, yeah. Marvel films, they are fantastic. And, you know, the fact that even their stinkers are better than a lot of films.
Yeah.
So, what is your favorite Marvel film, you know, in the MCU, and why, and what's ones that you just can't stand? We want to know. We want to interact with you in the comments. So, we are the Keepers of Nerddom, and we'll talk to you later.
See ya.
Bye.